Well, hello and welcome to part 20 of Let's Translate Light Novels, a series where I look at translations of a light novel that my patrons did and that I did when I was 18 years old and inexperienced at Japanese and at translating, and I critique the translations. Check the video description for disclaimers and credits and any other information about the series in case you're new to it. If you are new to this series, I highly recommend starting with episode 1 because these episodes kind of build off of each other. But anyway, let's just go. So remember the last one ended with Taria's mom, who has no name. This is lovely, by the way. Often one of my biggest laments of translating in general entertainment, but especially with light novels, is a lot of times there are just these unnamed characters. They're referred to as like teacher or so-and-so's teacher or so-and-so's father or sister-in-law or whatever. And it's like using a person's title instead of their name works so much better in Japanese than it does in English. It's just so clunky and awkward in English. So yeah, I hate that Taria's mother doesn't have a name. Even though she's, not a huge character in the book, I still wish she had a name. Anyway, Taria's mother told Matuta what the oracle was that Tenko gave at the summoning ceremony, and Tenko said, "Hey, there's some impure outsiders in our midst, and because they're here, your clan, your bond of unity in your clan has been broken, and you're gonna be destroyed pretty soon," basically. And Toria's mother's telling Matuta this, and Matuta's like, "Oh no, it's our fault that our clan is going to be destroyed." So Matuta's reaction, this line, 6 dots and an ellipses, nan deshite, with more ellipses in there, followed by the narration, gakkuri to yoromeki kaketa karada wo Matuta wa hashira ni tsukamari karojite sasaeta. Word by word, so gakkuri is like a sound effect for clunking. Kind of think if you're in an elevator and it goes gakun or gakkuri. It's kind of like that. Yoromeku is like to wobble. If you add the kakeru or kaketa suffix, it's an auxiliary verb. If you add that to another verb, it means was doing this verb, was in the process of doing this verb. So her body, her karada, which was already in the process of wobbling with a clunk. She was about to do this thing. That's kind of what kakeru or kaketa means, about to do this verb. Matuta wa, Matuta, the character. Hashira is a pillar. Tsukamari is the stem version, the verb stem of tsukamaru, to grab onto something. Karojite. So karojite is barely, struggling to do something. So karojite, sasaeta, this whole hashira ni tsukamari karojite, sasaeta is barely grasped a hold of the pillar to support herself. Sasaeru, to support. So patron A translated that as, "What did you say?" Matuta stumbled forward, just barely grasping a pillar for support. I like that a lot. You don't need the whole with a clunk or the sound effect of gakurito. Patron B, Matuta's legs failed her. Only her grip on a nearby beam kept her standing, just barely. I like the wording of all of this, but only and just barely are a bit redundant. They're not completely the same thing. Her grip was the only thing that kept her standing, but only just barely. I don't know. I guess reading it through the first time it sounded a bit redundant, but I understand linguistically that it's not redundant. And then the line of dialogue, it can't be. I like that. Yeah, you know what's interesting about splitting up words with ellipses? So what she's saying here, minus all the ellipses, is just nandeste, which is what did you say, basically. The ellipses, as I talked about in other videos past in this series, ellipses, they more just kind of show how a line is vocalized. And the ellipses are showing that Matuta is just utterly shocked and she can barely speak. That's what these ellipses are showing. What, ... did you just say ... question mark? That can be read a few different ways. I don't know, sometimes I might think of that as someone said, "Hey, if you enter this contest, the first prize is $1 million. What did you just say?" That, it could be read that way, but it can't be. That is a lot more clear in conveying that she's shocked. She doesn't like what she just heard. Having the it ... it again like that stuttering and that repeating of words shows more shock, surprise, just being gutted versus what did you just say, like breaking up the question, what did you just say, with ellipses. While that works in Japanese, in English, it can add some different nuances to it that you don't necessarily want. It's not bad and it's not wrong. I'm just, of these two, personally, I prefer it, ... it can't be, over what, ... did you just say, ... question mark. Yeah, and I kind of like Matuta's legs failed her, period. And then only her grip on a nearby beam kept her standing, just barely. It's interesting if you look at Patron A and Patron B. I'm just so stuck on this. Like, Patron A, because Patron A started with the dialogue, just like the Japanese did, Patron A's, like, you're seeing it kind of narrated in real time. What did you just say? And then she stumbled forward, and then she barely grasped the pillar for support. That's kind of telling the story in, in the order of all of the actions happening. Patron B kind of flipped that whole thing backwards in a way. It's sort of like Matuta's legs failed her, only her grip on a nearby beam kept her standing, just barely. It's more past tensey, and then it can't be. I don't know which one of those I prefer exactly, but just noting that it's different. And then small Sarah, what ... are you saying? Yeah, it just doesn't convey enough shock and emotion. With difficulty, Matuta supported her shaking body by clutching onto a pillar. It's technically correct. Her shaking body is kind of weird. Like, shaking body evokes images in my mind of somebody, like, I don't know, gyrating on the dance floor. It's more like her limbs are shaking. Next line of dialogue. I'm trying not to be so overly wordy in my analysis this video, since the last episode was like an hour long. その誇りを持ちて、さらなる結束を深めよとのお告げを毎年くだされていた主様が。All right, so this line. Notice how その誇りを持ちてさらなる結束を深めよ. That's a quote because it's in Japanese quotes. And then to is noting that was a quote. So, その誇り, your, in this case, for sono, pride or dignity. I liked how Patron B has translated hokori as dignity instead of pride. を持ちて, like, take, hold, your pride, keep your pride. Saranaru kessoku. So saranaru is like a new. Kessoku is unity or bond. Ofukameyo. So, and deepen, like, your bond anew. Like, this is written in sort of like grand Japanese, so you want to think more grand English. To, so, otsuge o maitoshi kudasarete ita nushi-sama ga. So, the nushi-sama, their lord, who every single year had bestowed upon them kudasarete ita, this oracle, the oracle of, keep your pride and renew and deepen your bond anew every single year. Like, that's what he always said every single year. And then the ellipses and an exclamation point. So the implication here is like, I can't believe that he said that destruction is nigh. I can't believe that he said that. Because every single year, as far as I've known, he's just come down and been like, yeah, you guys are doing good. Just keep being strong with your bonds of unity and your pride, and keep renewing that commitment to each other, and you'll be hunky-dory. So that's the implication there. The I can't believe that he said that part is omitted in the Japanese, but it's implied with the ellipses and the exclamation point. And then it's kind of unclear here if this is just a narration or if this is Matuta kind of thinking this. So I kind of interpret it a little more as like Matuta's thinking this because the last passage was describing how she, was clutching onto the pillar for support, and, so now this is kind of what's racing through her mind as she's clutching the pillar for support. So Patron A, wasn't the divination their lord gave every year, grab hold of your pride and strengthen your unity? It's a little like grab hold of your pride. I don't know. It's a little literal. It's more just like keep a hold. I don't know. Grab hold of your pride sounds a little weird. And strengthen your unity. Yeah, it's more like strengthen your unity anew. Like keep doing so. Patron B. The Lord, who every other year had declared, let us deepen our bond so that your dignity may endure. I like that. See, let us deepen our bond so that our probably would have been better there, just agreeing on the pronoun. Let us deepen our bond so that our dignity may endure. Had this year turned his favor from them. So note how patron B, the whole had this year turned his favor from them part was all extrapolated from just the ellipses, the hanging ellipses and the exclamation point. As I said, like Matuta's thinking to herself, well, he used to say, just be kind to each other and strengthen your bond. And now he's saying this thing, shunning them. Yeah, had this year turned his favor from them. So patron B decided to take more an approach of this is the narration expressing this rather than that this is what Matuta is thinking. Which it works too. Yeah, wasn't the divination their Lord gave every year, grab hold of your pride and strengthen your unity? Versus the Lord, who every other year had declared, let us deepen our bonds so that your dignity may endure, had this year turned his favor from them. Yeah, I think the second one is a little clearer with the quote in the middle. They're both okay. But yeah, I much prefer the quote from Tenko in Patron B. Okay, small Sarah, show us what you got. Take your pride, and deepen your unity is what the Lord, who had presented his oracle every year, had said. Yeah, there's no I don't understand. Didn't he say this other thing? In that, it's just I don't know, it's a little too matter-of-fact and not at all emotional. Missing that astonishment, small Sarah. Okay, next line. Anta tachi kono mura o dete itte! Exclamation point. Taria no haha ga sakenda. Oh, sakenda! She screamed it. Or shrieked it or yelled it. そしてマトゥタに指を突きつけた。さもなきゃ、あんたたち、村人たちに殺される with a small tsu. Alright, so あんたたち, you guys. That's like a rude, rough way of saying you guys. この村を出て行って、leave this village at once. Taria no haha ga sakenda. So Taria's mother yelled or cried or screamed, shouted. そして、and then she, pointed her finger, thrusted her finger, pointed it sharply at Matuta. Samonakya. So this is kind of older Japanese here, but it's if you don't do this, or unless, it's a threatening sort of thing. Anta tachi, there it is again. You guys, scornfully. Murabito tachi ni, the villagers. Korosareru. So korosareru is the passive voice of korosu, which is to kill. So you will be killed by the villagers. Patron A. You must leave this village, Talia's mother shouted. She pointed at Matuta, or else the villagers shall kill you both. Yeah, I guess the shall works because she's using, kind of older Japanese here. You must leave this village, yes, Talia's mother shouted. It's not so much you must, but a command, get the hell out of this village. You must leave this village sounds more like advice or like a warning. But it's really more she's get the frick out of this village. She's being pretty rude. And then Talia's mother shouted, period. She pointed at Matuta, period. I don't know, on the one hand, it's nice because, again, when you're doing, something really snappy and shouty and there's, action happening, it can be nice to have a bunch of short sentences because it gives you that sensation. But right after each other, I don't know, it looks kind of weird in English. In Japanese, it works okay. Patron B. And so I say, be gone from this village. Taria's mother stabbed a finger accusingly at Matuta. Yeah, stabbed a finger accusingly is great for yubi o tsuki tsuketa. It has that whole, it paints a picture. Her voice reverberating through the dwelling as she denounced. That's a bit of an extrapolation. Just from sakenda. I think that's taking a bit of a liberty. I like it, but it is taking a bit of a liberty, as she denounced. Or else, the villagers, they'll have no choice but to kill you. Yeah, and again, because of the small tsu at the end, it should be more like an exclamation point at the end. But yeah, I like the description here. Taria's mother stabbed a finger accusingly at Matuta, her voice reverberating through the dwelling as she denounced. But yeah, the her voice reverberating through the dwelling as she denounced was pretty much a complete extrapolation from just sakenda. Taria's mother stabbed a finger accusingly at Matuta, shouting, or else the villagers will have no choice but to kill you. You don't need the whole her voice reverberating through the dwelling. Even though it's cool and I like it, it's a little too much. Small Sarah, you should leave this village at once. Again, that sounds a little more like advice than a threat. Taria's mother shouted and pointed a finger at Matuta. Yeah, that's same note for Small Sarah as I gave to Patron A, only with Small Sarah, it's even worse. I don't know. Taria's mother shouted, and pointed a finger at Matuta. I don't know. It's kind of weird. If you don't hurry up, the other villagers will kill you both. No, that's more like a threat. Yeah. If you don't hurry up. It's more like unless, or otherwise. Anyway, yeah. Let's go to the next line. So the next line we've got like an ellipses of 12 dots followed by 2 exclamation points. その時だった。母さん、少女の声がした方に、二人の女は It's so funny having like onna in there. I don't know. Onna, like by itself, when you're talking about a woman or women, it's kind of rude. It's sort of like the females or the bitches. Anyway, 二人の女は、一斉に顔を向けた。So その時だった. I think this came up in a different episode of the series as well. But literally その時だった means like that was the time or whatever. Or it was that time. But in English, it's really more like, and that's when it happened. Or then all hell broke loose. And then ... It's like, it's letting you know that like something significant is about to happen. Or like right now, this is when the significant thing happens. 母さん, mom. 少女の声がした方に, so the direction where the girl's voice came from. 二人の女は, the two women at once 一斉に顔を向けた looked over. So the two women looked over at once in unison in the direction from which the girl's voice came. Patron A, they heard a gasp. I really like that as a translation for the ellipses with like exclamation points and sono tokiratta, they heard a gasp. That does the trick, because when you hear a gasp, like if you're watching a movie or something and a scene is happening and then off camera you hear a gasp and then like everyone on camera like in shock turns and looks toward, like you can kind of picture that, right? That's kind of what the ellipses and exclamation points and the sono tokiratta is doing narratively. So they heard a gasp works really super well here. Mother! The two women turned in unison towards Talia's voice. Yeah, turned in unison. Like, in unison isn't wrong. I even used in unison when I was, like, explaining what these words mean. But I don't know, in unison might not sound the best here. It sounds more like they did so, like, in harmony, in unison. That's kind of what I think of when I think of in unison. But these women are, like, at each other's throats. One of them almost threatened to kill the other one just now, basically. It's not wrong, though. Patron B, Matuta could only stare back in shock. That's wrong. Well, let's see. Yeah. I think... Oh, you know what? It's not necessarily wrong. I take that back. Sorry, Patron B. Yeah, the ... with the 2 exclamation points, that could be Matuta's reaction. I at the moment was sort of reading that as Talia's reaction, but no, it's Matuta's mother's reaction, so never mind. But anyway, Matuta could only stare back in shock. Yes, that works very well for the 2 exclamation points. It was at that moment a girl's voice rang out, and both women turned to look in the direction of the sound. That's a little too, like, I don't know, once upon a time in the village. It's kind of casual narrating-y, and, you know, it's not wrong necessarily. And then mom following the narration there. It was at that moment, and you know, it was at that moment works pretty well for sono tokiratta. That a girl's voice rang out and both women turned to look in the direction of the sound. Mom! You know, I don't hate that, actually. I think it does work upon further reflection. It changes the tone a little bit from the Japanese, but it flows really super well. So I don't hate that. That's pretty nice. Small Sarah. Mom! Both mothers, I thought it was like both members. Both mothers look up. In the Japanese, it's not even present tense. Why did Small Sarah do present tense there? Both mothers look up in the direction the girl's voice came from. Yeah, that's kind of weird. I like how short that is, though. Because I feel like in real time in the scene, everything is kind of happening boom, 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 boom. So it's kind of nice to condense everything. We're kind of missing the the lead up to mom, though, it goes directly from, if you don't hurry up, the other villagers will kill you both, to just mom. Both mothers look up in the direction. Yeah, it needed a little bit of a bridge there that the Japanese did have. Okay, next line. Naki wa meki nagara haha ni te o hikarete iku Taria no sugata ga dandan chisaku natte iku. Ayuru! Ayuru! Exclamation points. So, naki wa meki nagara is like while screaming and crying. Haha ni te o hikarete iku. So, having her hand pulled by her mother. And then the iku at the end, that auxiliary verb is like, this verb is like continuing to happen, sort of like further away from matuta and ayuru. Taria no sugata. So the look of Taria, her form, her body, her silhouette, the silhouette of Taria being dragged away by the wrist, I would probably say, instead of hand, just because hand sounds too nice and wrist is more forceful. While screaming and crying, dandan chisaku natte iku, it gets, or it got smaller and smaller into the distance, and then she screamed, Ayuru, Ayuru! All right, so patron A, no, Ayuru, Ayuru! With lots of exclamation points. Talia bawled, her mother dragging her away from him. I like that. It's, again, if it's something that's happening really snappily, it can help to shorten your text, just so that it happens faster to the reader. Yeah, and like in the Japanese, it's kind of written a little more from Ayuru and Matuta's perspective. They're like watching Ayuru get smaller and smaller in the distance. Her mother dragging her away from him. Yeah, that's a little interesting then. Patron A made this mostly from Talia's perspective. Talia bawled, her mother dragging her away, and then from him. Yeah, it is kind of more from Taria's perspective here. But in the Japanese, it was a little more from Ayuru's perspective. It's more like he's standing there watching, and we're watching through his eyes as she gets smaller and smaller in the distance, screaming and crying. So it's an interesting choice to change it to Taria's perspective. Patron B, Ayuru, Ayuru! Taria howled as her mom held her back, the two of them growing smaller and smaller as Ayuru and Matuta distanced themselves from the house. Yeah, I think that was just a bit of a misunderstanding of who's being dragged where and who's disappearing where. Yeah, so Taria no sugata, the silhouette of Taria, is the thing that is being dragged away by her mother by the hand while crying and screaming. And Taria's silhouette is the thing that gets smaller and smaller in the distance. I mean, from Taria's perspective, Ayuru and Matuta are also getting smaller and smaller in the distance. But yeah, Ayuru and Matuta distance themselves from the house is not even in the Japanese. I'm trying to see if it comes up later in the Japanese and it was just moved back. Okay, I had to get up and take care of some bread rolls that I'm baking, so this might not flow properly. But anyway, I think we're on small Sarah. While crying and screaming and being pulled away by her mother, Taria grew smaller and smaller. Ayuru! Ayuru! While crying and screaming is kind of weird. Just crying and screaming works. And being pulled away by her mother. Passive voice, yeah, passive voice makes things sound a little weird. Taria grew smaller and smaller. Yeah, if I were to translate this today, I would translate it from Ayuru's POV. I might even say something like, Ayuru stared as Taria, screaming and crying, like, grew smaller and smaller into the distance. I don't know. I mean, that's not exactly how I would translate it, because obviously her mom has to be yanking her by the wrist. But yeah, I think I would probably make this kind of more from Ayuru's POV. The being pulled away is just weird. Dragged is much better than pulled here, I guess. Anyway, next line. I don't want to make this video an hour long like the last one. So next line. もう二度とこの家に来てはいけないし、アユルに会うことも許さないと母にきつく言われた少女が精一杯反抗した後のことだった。So, this is just so frustrating. This little bit of narration here is it does this thing that Japanese storytelling does a lot, where it kind of jumps around a little bit narratively. So if you notice, like, その時だった母さん, this part, like, that's when it happened. Taria sees them and screams, and the moms both look at her. And then a time jump happens here. It's not like immediately after Taria screams mom and the two women look at her. It's not like immediately after that happens, her mom drags her away, kicking and screaming and crying. Something happens between then and there. It's kind of like if you're watching an anime or a movie, it's like an abrupt scene change. Like, you're having the argument inside the house, and then Taria shows up at the door, and then they cut the camera, and now it's suddenly an outside view of the house, and Taria is screaming and crying, and her mom is dragging her away, and the other two are watching. That's kind of what's happening here narratively. And then this sentence here goes backwards in time and explains what happened in between Taria showing up and saying mom and her mom dragging her away. And it's like, if you think of it as a movie or as, you know, some visual media thing, it makes sense. But in a novel, like in English, it's kind of clunky and it doesn't necessarily work super well. So I'm interested to see how the patrons and how Small Sarah handled this. So, もう二度とこの家に来てはいけないし, so, never again, もう二度と this house, この家に来てはいけない. We can never, Taria and her mom could never come, Taria basically, could never come to their house again. And she, it's saying like, well, here's one thing, and it's going to be followed up with some other things. アイルに会うことも許さないと. So, and you'll never be allowed to see Ayuru ever again. So, you're never going to be allowed to come to his house ever again, and you're never going to be allowed to see Ayuru ever again. と、母にきつく言われた. So, these are the things that she was told strictly by her mother. Shoujo, the girl, Taria. Ga, so the shoujo is the subject of this sentence, and it's preceded by all of this crap of like, the girl who was told by her mother harshly that she can never come to this house again and never see Ayuru again. This girl, seippai, with all her might, hanko shita, or like resisted, fought, ato no koto datta. So this ato no koto datta, so like, her being dragged away is what happened after her mom yelled at her harshly and said, hey, you're never going to come here again and you're never going to see Ayuru again. And after Taria, like, screamed and was like, no, how dare you? I'm going to keep seeing Ayuru. So that's what happened before she was dragged away. All right, patron A. She was told that she was not allowed to visit or even see Ayuru ever again and tried her hardest to fight against it. I suppose that works, flowing from no, Ayuru Taria bawled, her mother dragging her away from him. She was told that she was not allowed to visit or even see Ayuru ever again and tried her hardest to fight against it. Yeah, it's still a little unclear though, like, she was told when. When was she told this? In the Japanese, it's clear that, like, this is what happened in between the ladies looking in unison towards Taria's screaming voice and Taria being dragged away kicking and screaming. So it's a little unclear in the English translation when she was told that she was not allowed. I mean, I think you can probably guess as the reader, okay, she was told now. But it still could have been worded a little bit better. Again, this is kind of hard because the way it's ordered in Japanese is just weird. All right, patron B. Taria's mother had told the children upon their return about Ayuru's banishment from the household and from Taria's life, and Taria had done everything in her power to express her opposition to that declaration. Yeah, that's very, like, the narrator is speaking now. Taria's mother had told the children upon their return. You know, it kind of works in a way here because this is almost an aside. The narrator being like, the reason why she was being dragged away and she was kicking and screaming was because, yeah, like, it kind of works. I tell you, there's really not much of a good solution here. I might even go so far, like, if I were translating this now professionally, as to just flip-flop the order of those sentences and just be like, the two ladies turned to look in the direction of the screaming, and then her mother told Taria that she could, I don't know, it's just weird. had told the children upon their return about Ayuru's banishment from the household is weird. Ayuru wasn't banished from the household. Ayuru's banished from the clan. Moniroto kono ie ni wa kite wa ikenai is Taria, you cannot come to this house ever again. So I think, again, it's a case of missing pronouns. Come on, Japanese, learn to use pronouns and names and stuff, and then it's clear who's doing what and who's being done what. Yeah. I think that's what was really tripping me up here. Ayuru's banishment from the household is not true. It's not even that Taria's banished. Like, she's just not to come there anymore. Like, she's not allowed to. I like the banish from Taria's life, though. Yeah, if it was like Ayuru's banishment from Taria's life would have been fine. Just leave out the household. Anyway, small Sarah, because she would never be able to go to this house. Oh, and I thought that she at the end was just because. It's like, it's not because. And would never be forgiven if she tried to see Ayuru again. Her disappearing silhouette was one of resistance to the most of her ability. Oh, interesting. Her disappearing silhouette was one of resistance to the most of her ability. I actually kind of like that. That paints an interesting picture, and it's a little poetic. I kind of like that. Good job, small Sarah. Because is weird, because she would never be able to go to this house and would be never be forgiven if she tried to see Ayuru again. Her disappearing silhouette. I kind of like it, actually. I kind of like that. Taking away the whole, her mom explained all of this stuff, and just putting the focus on Taria. Oh my god, small Sarah, did you do the best translation? Wow, that never happens. Yeah, I really like the way small Sarah handled this. I like that she took out the whole Taria's mother said this stuff and put the focus more on Taria. And Ayuru, like, watching her. I like that. Hey, good job, small Sarah. Next line. Ayuru wa haha matuta ni, haha matuta is so weird, his mother, matuta, ni kata o dakareta mama, kuchibiru o kamishime nagara Taria o miokutta. So, kata o dakareta mama, while still having his shoulder hugged by his mother, basically, kuchibiru o kamishime nagara, and while biting his lip, Taria o miokutta, he watched Taria leave, basically. Patron A. Ayuru bit his lip, watching his childhood friend disappear from view. I like his childhood friend instead of just Taria. It just, it makes the whole thing hit harder. Matuta gave him an embrace from behind. It's not necessarily from behind, but I mean, that's pretty nitpicky. She's like embracing his shoulder, basically. You could be embraced his shoulders. You could think of it like that. Initially, I thought, oh, she had an arm around his shoulder, but she very well could have been putting her hands on his shoulders from behind. So that's actually fine. I like that. I like that it was split into two sentences. And in the Japanese, it was like, while having his shoulder or shoulders hugged and while biting his lip, he watched Taria leave. It's kind of weird if you translate it that way in English. But yeah, Patron A didn't use the while doing something device at all, and it was really nice. Patron B. Matuta had kept her arms wrapped snug around her son's shoulders, and Ayuru had bit his lip as he was forced to bid Taria a solemn goodbye. So Patron B is kind of keeping this in the narrative of like, by the way, this is what happened before Taria was dragged away, kicking and screaming. Yeah, I don't know that I like that choice, because it takes us out of the moment. It's more like, by the way, this thing happened, instead of this thing is happening and you are experiencing it right now as a reader and crying along with Taria and Ayuru. It distances the reader a little bit. Yeah, if you just get rid of the had, Matuta kept her arms wrapped snug around her son's shoulders, and Ayuru bit his lip as he was forced to bid Taria a solemn goodbye. It's a lot stronger. Small Sarah. Ayuru, while being held by his mother, yay for literal translation, and while biting his lips, watched Taria slowly fade away. The watch Taria slowly fade away part is great. I like all of the way that all of us worded her disappearing. Like, Taria o miyokutta is more just literally he watched her go away, but watched his childhood friend disappear from view, forced to bid Taria a solemn goodbye, and watched Taria slowly fade away are all really great versions of that. Rather vague wording in Japanese. We all did a really good job making it a lot more emotional. Yeah, this while being held by his mother and while biting his lips is just, see how weak that is? See how dumb that sounds in English? So yeah, like, feel free to change nagara and mama and not express them as wow all the time, because it just sounds dumb. Next line. Kasama, shounen wa haha o miyageta. So mother, the boy, Ayuru, looked up at his mother. Patron A, mother, he looked up at her. Patron B, mother, Matuta's son looked up at her. I don't know that you need Matuta's son. I mean, I guess in the context of this scene, it was mostly through Matuta's POV. So perhaps that's warranted. And then small Sarah, mother, the boy looked up. Up at where, small Sarah? Up at his mother, and not the boy. We know it's Ayuru. All right, no more comments there, because that's pretty basic. Next sentence, narration. Kutou no tami kara shiitagerare tsuzukeru shousu minzoku no hinzoku ... period. その中ですら自分たちの居場所がないのか... period. So Kutou no tami kara, so from the citizens of Kutou, shitagerare tsuzukeru. They were like continued to be persecuted, oppressed by the citizens of Kutou. Shousu minzoku no hinzoku, that we've gone over that in past episodes, but it's like the ethnic minority, hinzoku, the little tribe of hinzoku, of Hin. Sono naka desura, even amongst them, even amongst the Hin. Jibun tachi, so jibun tachi in this case is Ayuru and Matuta. No ibasho, no place for them, no place where they could belong, no place for them to call home. Wa inai no ka, like, God, like, even the citizens of Kutou have persecuted us enough as it is, but it's like, do we not even have a place to call home among our own people, kind of thing? So Patron A, the Hin clan continue to suffer under the people of Kutou. Would there be a place for them to belong within their own people? That's kind of weird. It's kind of like hopeful questioning, but it's more like, God, now we've learned that not only are we persecuted by Kutou citizens, but there isn't even a place, like, oh my God, is there not even a place for us among our own people, kind of thing? Versus, would there be? It's more like, there isn't even? I can't believe that I just learned that there isn't even a place for us within our own people. Okay, Patron B. His message was plainly understood. His message? Oh, when he said mother and looked up at her. Okay. His message was plainly understood. The people of the minority Hin clan had been persecuted by the people of Kutou since time immemorial. I like that. And yet, even among that small group, there was no place for them. Yeah, like, adding his message was plainly understood connects him looking up at his mom and being like, Mom? And then having this next descriptive thing of like, they were persecuted and persecuted. This is, Ayuru thinking this, basically, as he's looking up at his mom and being like, Mom? Questioningly. So yeah, his message was plainly understood is a nice way of bridging those ideas together and making it make sense, even though it was not in the original Japanese. So I approve. Small Sarah, the Hin race, their little tribe was continuing to be oppressed. Continuing to be. Even within their own tribe, was there no place for them? I kind of like that. I like the even within their own tribe, was there no place for them? Yeah, was continuing to be oppressed is weird. Has been oppressed for so long. I don't know, yeah, continuing to be oppressed is just weird. I like the even within their own tribe part, though. Was there no place for them? The last line of this video, yay! Alright, 少年が答えを求めた母の視線はうつろでどこか遠くをさまよっているかのようだった。So 少年が the boy 答えを求めたlooking for answers 母の視線 his mother's gaze. So his mother's gaze, which he was searching for answers, Wa utsuro de was like vacant, empty. Dokoka de toko, and it was like wandering, looking off into the distance. Like it seemed like it was wandering and looking off into the distance, and it was vacant. This gaze of his mother's that he looked up into, trying to find his answers to the question that he was just thinking about persecution. All right, patron A. He looked at his mother for an answer, but from her vacant gaze, he could tell she was staring somewhere far away. I kind of liked that. You don't need that samayotte iru ka no yo. Like, it was as if she was wandering. Yeah, he looked at his mother for an answer, but from her vacant gaze, he could tell she was staring somewhere far away. Patron B, but his mother's blank stare gave no response, only projected blankly ahead, as if wandering in some distant space. You know, I kind of like that too. You know, it's a little more literal for the, like, as if wandering in some distant space, but I like the in some distant space. That ties it together. If it was like, as if wandering in the distance is kind of weird, but as if wandering in some distant space. In some distant space, not in some distance space. My brain fixed that. Yeah, I like that one. Okay, small Sarah. The boy looked for the answer. An answer would probably be better. In his mother's eyes, which seemed to be wandering off far away. Kind of works. It's correct, but it doesn't sound the best. I like the other two better. All right, well, that is the end of episode 20 of Let's Translate Light Novels. We have 3 months left of this series. Unless you're watching it, like, significantly after its upload, in which case it might already be done. Anyway, thank you to all the patrons who participated and who support this series and the other series on my channel, and especially my super patrons, Greg, Lay, Henry Roaming, Data Fox. Yay! You make this series possible. I'm going to finish this episode and eat a walnut cranberry bread roll. Goodbye.